I love how it now says that. Hi, I'm Malika Albrecht, and I have been fortunate enough to be running a weekly book launch for poets that have new books during the pandemic and during these times. And this has been my space of just grace. And tonight I couldn't be more excited to welcome Grace Bauer. I am so excited about Unholy Heart. You're about to be treated to some amazing reading. I love the range. We're going to get poems from all different books and also new poems. So I am going to turn it over to Grace, and I'm going to make you the spotlight, Grace. So give me one moment because I'm not that fast. Yay! Welcome so much. We're so pleased to have you. And if you don't know who Grace is, I do have her bio in the chat section, and I did want to say, I know of 7 books that you've written, but I know it's way more than that. I mean, The Women at the Well, Nowhere All at Once, of course, Unholy Heart, Beholding Eye. How many total?
Well, I have 5 full-length books before this one, and it's the 5 books that are in here. And then I also had 4 chapbooks. So and I didn't include any of the poems from the chapbooks in the selected, although some of those did make it into the full-length collections. And then I've also edited 2 anthologies, the last of which was called Nasty Women Poets, an unapologetic anthology of subversive verse. And that was partly in reaction to the crazy times where we've been living in for a while. So, yeah.
And just that title alone makes me happy. I'm so glad. So thank you so much, Grace. Before we get started, I wanted to say that, is there a place where you would like us to order the Unholy Heart from?
The best place to order is directly from the University of Nebraska press, and this, I think it's still going on this summer. You would see just the amazing array of poetry books that they have published, both through the University of Nebraska imprint, some of their other imprints, including Backwaters Press, the African Poetry Series, the Prairie Schooner Book Prize. So their catalog of poets is pretty impressive. It's very impressive. And I think it's still going on through the summer, that they're running a pretty sizable sale on poetry books. So you can get some deals.
Great. I'll put that link up while we're together tonight, so that people can just click on that and go straight to the site and order the book.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yours. Thank you, Grace.
So, well, I will start reading from Unholy Heart, my new and selected poems. And I always try to plan ahead of time so that I'm not fumbling too much through the book during the middle of a reading. And as I was looking today, I thought I'm going to read, maybe I was thinking of Nasty Women Poets, but I'm going to read bad girl poems for the most part. And I have quite a few of them. So I will begin with maybe the original mythological bad girl, or one of them, and that being Eve. And this is from the first book I published, which was not the first book I wrote, but it was the first book I published, which was called The Women at the Well. And that book is a collection of monologues in the voices of women from the Bible. So this is called Eve Recollecting the Garden, and it's Eve speaking, and she is speaking to Adam because she doesn't have too many other choices. And it focuses on that sort of chapter in the Genesis story where they're naming the animals, okay, which seemed like a poet's job to me. So, Eve Recollecting the Garden. Was it your nakedness or the knack you had for naming I learned to love? Crow, you whispered, and wings flapped black as satin in the sky. Bee and sweetness thickened on my tongue. Lion, and something roared beneath the ribs you claimed you'd sacrificed. Our first quarrel arose about the beast I thought deserved a nobler tag than dog, and orchid, a sound more delicate. Admit it, dolphin, starling, antelope were syllables you stole from me, and you were the one who swore we'd have to taste those blood-red globes of fruit before we'd find the right word for that God-forsaken tree. So the next poem I will read is from the book Retreats and Recognitions, and it's called Midlife Heavy Metal. I know I'm not the only woman in the world who spent her adolescence lusting to a backbeat, and still in some part of herself she has grown to, to deny, can't resist a big mouth bad boy, surly siren in tight pants, and who swaggers and snarls and screams his heart out in the name of rock and roll. There he is on my TV screen, older than I am and showing his age, but still strutting what stuff he's got. He's Heathcliff with a microphone, a long, tall glass of water spiked with acid and desire, his hair a black mass of styling gel and tease, mouth a severe weather warning, eyes an invitation to a party we'll regret if we go to or not. Oh, we know better. Or at least we know we should. But somewhere deep inside, we still long for all the trouble he could stir up. We want to hear every lie we know by now his kind tells. We want to lie back, strut our own stuff, and be just a little bit like him, that bad boy every good girl is inside. So I have lived in Nebraska for, unbelievable to me, but I have lived in Nebraska for 25 years now. Probably won't be too much longer, but I have a love-hate relationship with the Great Plains. I love Lincoln, but the whole Great Plains thing is, I have a love-hate relationship with. And this is from a series of sort of a little mini series of prayer poems I wrote, and it's in my book Nowhere All at Once, and the prayer poems are fairly snarky, but they are indeed prayers. So this is a snarky one, kind of about the Great Plains. Definitely about the Great Plains, and it's called Great Plains Prayer. Bless us, O Lord, and this our jello, our corn, our steaks and kolaches, our heat indexes, our wind chills, our sunsets and horizons, our endless waves of grain and grass, our ancestors who started out for the coast but stopped halfway, our nostalgia for their calico, their sod, their old homesteads, our denial of the meth labs that have taken their place. Bless our perseverance, our unerring politeness, our red state politics, and our white bread. Bless our dubious status as tornado alley, as flyover zone, and bless all those who fly over, as well as those of us who, out of choice or necessity or inertia, forgive us, we know not why or what we've done, but by God, stayed. The next poem I'll read is from my book, Beholding Eye. And Beholding Eye is all ekphrastic in one way or another. Some more overtly so, poems directly about paintings or sculptures. Some of them are written in the voices of women artists. And then there's a section that was also published in a chapbook called Where You Seen Her, and they're loosely based on the photographs of Cindy Sherman, if anyone knows her work. And what Cindy Sherman does is, she has for decades now, all her photographs are self-portraits. They're not self-portraits, they're photographs of her. And I've seen many, many of her photographs. And if Cindy Sherman walked into a room and sat down next to me, I'm not sure I would recognize her, because she is sort of this master of disguise. And this is more about her earlier work, or I was interested in her earlier work, where she did all these things that these still photographs that looked like stills from films, and so they were just these women not doing anything remarkable, and it just dawned on me that she was sort of trying to capture the varieties of some sort of every woman kind of persona. And so that's what I was trying to do in some of these poems. And so this one is called Her Search for Great Causes. And there's an epigraph from an unlikely source. It's an old herbal book by Jethro Kloss called Back to Eden. And it's sort of like a little, like an encyclopedic kind of herbal book where you can look up herbs and it will tell you what they're good for. Or you could look up certain ailments or diseases and it will tell you what herbs you might take, and it's quite useful. So I'm not making fun of the book so much, although he did have some ideas about, right living, and that comes out here because I was paging through at one time through the sort of ailment disease section and came across this ailment which he lists as undue sexual desire. Causes: excessive eating of all stimulating foods, such as eggs, meats of all kinds, cheese, chocolate, tea, coffee, and all alcoholic drinks. And then in parentheses, he wrote, novel reading and impure thoughts are also great causes. And so the title of this poem is Her Search for Great Causes. The weather doesn't help much. Humidity lays its sticky hands on every inch of skin. Even the slight stir of breeze comes like hot breath down her neck. She lies half nude before an open window, running her tongue around the rim of a frosted glass of bourbon. She eats oysters, raw, with extra Tabasco, scrapes buttered artichokes between her perfect white teeth. Scattered across her rumpled sheets are D.H. Lawrence, Henry Miller, Faulkner, a few trashy Gothics. She has been through the tryst in the hallway, the corn crib, that gardener in the grass. She will wait all of August for the dark and brooding man, perhaps a demon, perhaps a wayward heir. He will sneak up her stairs in the moonlight and make her blood run cold. So when I originally approached the University of Nebraska about the possibility of doing a book, I was asking about just a selected poems, but they sent my proposal to an outside reader, and the editors there agreed that really I should make it a new and selected, which was kind of a challenge because I was working on a series of poems that I'd been working on off and on for several years, and this is one of the poems, Malika, you saw in Swim. There's a series of poems. They're all called, the character is somebody named Ms. Schadenfreude. And I didn't want to break up that series because I anticipated eventually being a whole book. And the other things I was working on were the poems they weren't poems. They were things I had written down. They were very raw. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that my father died 3 years ago. It'll be 3 years in October. And I was just dealing with that and writing my thoughts on that and the whole process of his dying. And I just was not prepared to actually work on them as poems. I was just getting stuff out. So this sort of forced me to do that to some extent. And yeah, so for better or worse, I will read some of these. And this one I wrote after my family are practicing Catholics, though I am not. And this is called Provisions for the Journey. And I think it's pretty self-explanatory. If you don't know Catholic sacraments and ritual, there's the sacrament of last rites, what they used to call extreme unction. So provisions for the journey. I wanted to slap that priest in his fat face when he said, "I know it's hard," after hurrying through my father's last rites. I wanted to tell him, "You don't know shit," as he waddled down the stairs, complaining about how narrow they were for his size 12 feet. Not to mention your triple X gut, I thought, convinced he was more concerned with his late lunch than my father's final days, though it turned out to be several weeks before his body gave in to spirit. I kept my anger to myself because the ritual, however rushed, seemed to have brought some comfort. He slept soundly for an hour, then called me to his side to make what I thought might be his last request. "Get a glass, a nice glass." His voice was thin but emphatic. "Put in 3 ice cubes." He paused, held up 3 fingers as if he were making a pledge or bestowing a blessing. Then he cleared his throat, another pause. Then fill it with whiskey. And like the servant of the Lord I tried to be in those long final days, I delivered that cup unto him. So I did spend a lot of time, and I'm still doing, in fact, I'm leaving tomorrow to fly back to Pennsylvania because my mother, who is still living and is going on 92, and she also has her issues. So I've been trying to get back there more often. And this is about being in an airport and with a long layover and having someone try to sell me some stuff that, and this was after my father passed away, but so it's called Terminal Beauty. "What is your greatest concern?" the salesgirl asks. "Fine lines or dark circles?" The once over she gives me makes it clear she thinks my answer should be both. My layover is long, so I let her pat some goop around my eyes and give her spiel for this miracle product she swears she sees working before it's even dried. "See," she says, holding up a magnifying mirror in which I see nothing but my age, magnified. But that is not my greatest concern by a long shot. How about the world going gleefully to hell, climate change, terrorists, foreign and homegrown, hatred suddenly in style? She interrupts my litany to assure me that strong brows can make a difference, offers a demonstration, which I quickly decline. Her own brows make her look perpetually surprised, which I no longer am by much of anything, though the 11 lines between my eyes reveal the worry that has weighed on me for years. She tells me I'm in luck. There's a special offer this week on a sampler kit that will fit in my carry-on bag. I can begin with what she calls my new regimen while I'm still on the road. I say I'll think about it. Need a Starbucks before I decide. Though I know I'm going to stick with the drugstore brands already packed in my regulation Ziploc. I wander toward my gate, one face amidst a sea of wandering faces, each with a destination in mind, a history written in the hieroglyphics of our features, our wrinkles and scars, the expressions we have come to wear when we're too busy to care how we appear in the eyes of others. When I catch a glimpse of myself in a glare of glass, I decide I can live with what I'm seeing. My late father's nose, my mother's heavy-lidded eyes, the crooked smile I flash at my own reflection. This is it, the best face I'll ever have to put forward. It is no matter for great concern. And let's see. I think I have a few minutes, so I'm just going to read one more. And this is the last poem in the book. And it's called Update on Emily, and the Emily is Dickinson. Because death stops for everyone and is rarely ever kind, she writes her letters to the world, just a piece for the peace of her mind. The world, of course, rarely replies, not even an email or text. When you're a fly on the wall, a nobody, it's a silence you learn to expect. Yet the letters have become a way of life, or rather living, as natural to her as air and breath, her religion, a kind of believing. Will her words ever dazzle, shine, fade light through the cracks? Either way, in the end, she knows we're all called back. Thank you.
Y'all can unmute and clap because I know I want to. Grace, that was fabulous. I was just so excited. And Richard just wrote, I'm sure what everybody is feeling. He just said, all these poems are wonderful. So glad I came.
Well,
and
thank
Richard,
you very much.
too. Yeah, that was just amazing. I have to say I was falling in love with the humor and the snark and just
I have a lot of that.
Oh, I just love it. I just love, and I know Susanna, I totally can see where there'd be so much simpatico with Grace's work. It's very inspirational. So if people have questions, we've got Grace, you can go ahead and unmute since please feel free to just ask or I'll start talking. I know that much. I was writing down so many lines that I was just like, well, Susanna wrote, you are a true rock and roller, Grace. Yes, it's so true. So true. I did put the link in there directly to Unholy Heart up in the chat section.
Thank you. Thank you.
So people can get to it at the University of Nebraska Press. I'll do it again so it's up there. Yes. Oh, and some of the lines
Grace,
that I wanted to go back to.
Grace, has poetry been a lifelong pursuit for you, or did you come to it later, or what?
Oh no, I've been doing it since God, probably I started writing some kinds of things since soon after I learned how to write. So it's reading and writing has always been sort of central to me. That's my home in the world. So I got more serious about writing poetry probably after I was an undergraduate. I'm the first person in my family to ever go to college, and so I knew I was going to go to college, but I had absolutely no idea how one did that or what I wanted to be, and in my world, which was very working class, it was like, if I told somebody I wanted to be an astronaut, they would have said, oh, that's wonderful, dear, just study hard and maybe you could do that. But if I had said, oh, I want to be a poet, they would have been like, oh, okay. So I certainly took a lot of literature classes in college, although my undergraduate degree is in journalism. And it was after college, through a strange series of events, I ended up moving to New Orleans, where I lived for a decade. And that I just met a lot of other poets there, and they were, they accepted me. I would show up at things, and so they accepted me as a poet. So I could decide, well, oh, I guess maybe I am one. And that's all she wrote. So I've been doing, and then, then I went back to graduate school, and then I started teaching, etc. But have always done it.
That's awesome. And yes, of course, I remember that we have that New Orleans. I can see where that would have been a fabulous place for sparking and, just fueling that fire that you already had.
Yeah. So.
Yes. And I did want to ask, so it sounded like your process, because you write in so many different forms and across so many different subjects. And is that, do you just follow a passion? Is that how?
It's interesting because it's something I never planned this, but I thought of this a lot while I was putting together the selected poems. I have always, going back to my 20s, when, I think like a lot of people, when you first start writing, you write things that are very much autobiographical. You're dealing with your own past, your family, your experiences, whatever. And it would always happen, not by design, but I think what I'd be working on those poems, and I would just get so tired of the pronoun I that I would just have to start doing something else. So I was, working on what I thought was going to be my first book. I had all these poems, and I just got sick of writing in my own voice, and it just happened that I started writing those Bible poems. And I wrote one, and then I wrote two, and then I thought, I kind of like these, but how will they fit into a book? Maybe I should write a few more, and then I could interweave them in a book. Well, a few more then became a whole book. And then I started writing another book, much of what became Parts of Retreats and Recognitions, and then Nowhere All at Once. And again, as I was working on the book manuscripts and rearranging, I just would get sick of the pronoun I, and then I started writing about art. So it's my attention span or something. Like I can only do this one thing, and then I have to start doing something completely different to keep myself doing it. And then I was working on what became the book Meantime, and I was trying to be a little more experimental in that book, although truly experimental poets would probably look at that book and say, no, you're not. But and then I started working on these Miss Schadenfreude poems. So it's just, I keep doing it, and I keep going. So I keep going back, especially to persona and to ekphrasis. So to persona and writing about art. I just keep going back there.
Well, I think it's lovely because it allows, such a wealth of different ideas or things that you follow. And also it sounds like, I like that you head in one direction and you kind of say, I'm tired of these I poems. There's almost a balance that gets struck amongst that is, lovely as a reader to keep being excited about the same poet.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. So.
Does anybody else have any questions? And, I wanted to know about your process, because you said something about taking notes, and obviously, heavy grieving, and particularly when you've been a primary caregiver, it sounds like you were just taking notes on ideas or poems. Is that typical how you write?
Well, again, it depends. When I'm writing poems, again, that I'll call them autobiographically based or out of my own experience. It was almost like journal entries that I was, and I might play around with a line that maybe I thought had a good sound to it or had an image in it. But the poems about my father, I just couldn't do much more than that at that point. So I'm just constantly jotting down fragments, and then I look back over those periodically. So that's certainly part of the process for those kinds of poems. With the Bible poems or the ekphrastic poems, I would just, I went back and read a lot of the Bible, and reread parts of it, and read other books about the Bible or about biblical women. Or with the art poems, I just read tons of art history, and I actually really enjoy reading art history. I just like the way I like the way people write in art history, and I would take tons and tons and tons of notes, and a lot of times the notes didn't find their way into the poems, but I felt like if I was going to write a poem about whoever, especially when I was writing about women artists, that I really had to know a lot about them and their work, and somehow it would filter into the poems. So
I love that. I've begun to think that a lot of poets are very hungry for knowledge, or, like going down the rabbit holes. The journey's part of the whole experiment. And that's, you remind me of that, that lust for knowledge. You had something, Susanna?
I'm interested in the decision to do a new and to do a collected, as you said, with the new added on later. And I'm asking because it's something I've started to think about, but then I get confused because I'm not sure how does one decide when it's the right time to do that, and what drove the decision?
Well, the decision here was the fact that I was retiring after 25 years of teaching at the University of Nebraska, and the University of Nebraska Press has been publishing more and more poetry. When I first came here, they didn't publish as much poetry at all. Some, but now they really are publishing a lot of poetry. And so I thought, I've had a long career here. I became a named professor, et cetera. So I just queried them, and I thought, they should want to do one of my books, they kind of thing. And I knew some people at the press. I knew the woman who was the head of the press at that point. So I emailed her, and she was like, "Yes, send us a proposal, and we'll look at it." So that's what made me decide to pursue it. At least the fact that I thought the University of Nebraska Press, and I thought, well, 5 books. I've looked at other people's selected poems, and they did it after 5 or 6 books. So I thought it's worth asking, and it just seemed like the right time for that press. If they had said no, I don't know, what my next query, where my next query would have gone. I might have gone to Stephen F. Austin, who has published 2 of my books. They published one book that won a contest, an open reading period, and then they had and that was Nowhere All at Once. And then they actually came back to me a few years later and said, "Do you have another book you'd like to send us?" And they, at that point, Unholy Heart, my first book, was totally out of print because that was done by a very, very small press, basically a guy in his basement kind of publishing some New Orleans-based poets. And it was 20 years. So I said, "How would you feel about reissuing a book and making it like a 20th anniversary edition?" And they agreed to do that. So I might have queried them about selected, whether they would have been interested or not. I don't know. And so I would say if anyone who's published, I don't think fewer than 5 really, that might be a little too soon if someone didn't have at least 4 or 5 books, maybe 4, but 5. And once they had said, "Oh, make it a new and selected," I started looking at more and more books, and they were absolutely right. I mean, there are people who publish just selected poems, but those tend to be really big names, super famous. poets, which I'm not. So I was glad they pushed me to do that. And it was good to have that, you know, during much of the last summer, once classes were over last year, that was my last semester of teaching. That's what kept me sane through the first part of the real isolation, because I had this definite project that I was working on. So.
Wow, that's awesome. Thanks for that question, Susanna. It was good to hear, you know, more talk about that. Hey, Christy, you normally have a question. I'm surprised. You're muted, honey.
I'm just taking it all in tonight. I think I do have a question though, because I had a hard time deciding how to order my chapbook. How did you go about that process?
Oh, the fact that you think it's a hard process probably means you're doing it right. I mean, you know, one thing, for instance, with the women at the well, which is all based on the Bible, well, that one was pretty easy to organize because the Old Testament is a generational book. So you kind of had to go in order. It wouldn't make sense if you put Eve in the middle of it. She's got to go first, you know. But with other books, it is always, and the only way I know to do it is I have to have the physical pages. And I've done this not only for myself, I've done this with dozens of graduate students putting together their first chapbook or their first, and you just take those pages and you lay them out on the biggest table you can find or on the floor, and you try to get a sense of what you have, and you shuffle and you reshuffle. It is a process. You know, I do this with I do some book consulting, and this is what I tell people to do. Another good thing to do sometimes is I'll tell people to kind of label their poems, like go through all the poems you have and say, if you're going to label it by quote unquote subject matter, like this is a poem about my mother, this is a biblical poem, this is a poem about art, and it just label it, you know, with actually write the labels on there, and then and see what you have. And some poems you might say, well, this is a poem about my mother, this is also a memory poem, or so some poems might have more than one label. Okay, maybe they'll have 2 or 3 labels. Then the other thing to do is and then go through it again and say, well, okay, now look at imagery or motifs that might be going through the poems. Like, okay, this is a poem about my mother, but there's all these colors in this poem. Or this is a poem about, you know, my childhood, but there's all these trees in this poem. And that just gives you ways to, I think of weaving a book together. I mean, sometimes you might have organize it in clumpier sections. It's like how would you organize a quilt? Well, if you want a crazy quilt, you're going to organize it differently than if you have one of those ring quilts or whatever. And there's not always the same answer. You know, a crazy quilt can be beautiful. A ring quilt can be a wedding ring quilt or whatever they call it, can be beautiful. All kinds of possibilities can work. You have to find the possibility for every book. There's no magical formula that I don't know, maybe someone else has a magical formula. I don't know what it is, if such a thing exists.
No,
so
that helps.
that you're struggling, that's good. That's good. Yeah. Just keep shuffling them.
That's kind of what I did. And I weeded out a lot of things and threw some things out, put some things back in. So, you know.
Yeah.
I love the idea of the crazy quilt. And that was interesting too. Instead of, you know, I liked also looking at patterns in a different way.
course,
I just want to
sure.
come back to something you said about consulting for books and what would be the best way for people to contact you if that was something they were interested in. I did put your link from Poets and Writers Organization, the directory there, but I was looking for a website or a way to contact you for books.
Yeah, I'm being technically challenged. I don't have a website quite yet. Somebody is working on one for me, but you can just email me at gbauer@unl.edu. I will say that I probably won't be doing it for at least I'm taking on anyone else for at least a month or two, maybe till October. But I do have a standard sort of contract that I've done with people and stuff. So
Awesome. Well, I put the email in the chat section if you're interested. So go ahead and click it or cut and paste. Thank you so much, Grace. This was just
well,
fabulous.
thanks for having me.
Thank you. If there's no more questions, we can move on to open mic. And I do know Susanna had offered to read. And I think I missed somebody who else said.
I thought someone else
read.
said.
Okay, Christy. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I think did Richard? Did you say you wanted to read, or did Doc say you wanted to read?
I
Like
would,
I
I would
said.
like to read, yes.
Awesome.
I would like.
Okay, great. Then we will start with Susanna, move to Christy, go to Richard, and then Doc, and then Don. I'm glad to see you. We would love to hear you read if you would like to.
Well, why don't you read something at the end, Malika?
I always forget to bring in something, but I can do that. I can do that if there's time. Thank you, Christy. All right, Susanna, I'm coming to you.
Okay. So this is a post Dead Shark poem, and it's called Barcelona. And so I returned to New York City, shoes nicked from paving stones, a slight tan. I can still taste the purplish sweetness of sangria, though I cried at a cafe one afternoon, the police rounding up the Mantaros, Senegalese and Southeast Asian immigrants selling handbags, roughing them and their blankets of counterfeits into unmarked vans. Did I tell you I saw a shirt I knew you'd like in the window of a closed shop? This too reminded me of thwarted wishes. When I circled back, I couldn't find that store. All around me were Americans nervous because of the terrorist driver on La Rambla. I stopped to look closely at the colorful birds in the market, remembering how the last time I walked these streets, everything was just low-level murmur in my world. This year, even with the pretty birds, I couldn't ignore that people were dying on streets in so many places. Last night, I dreamed you wrote a memoir, and I was anxious to know what you said about me. Did I tell you the shirt I couldn't buy had little squiggles that were the same color as your eyes?
Oh, that's gorgeous. Thank you, Susanna.
Thank you.
Yes. Oh, that's awesome. This is why I love open mic. Chrissy, I'm headed your way now.
Okay. So this poem is in the upcoming chapbook that is titled Finding Her through Finishing Line Press. And since you talked about bad girls tonight, I pulled this poem because I wrote this for a friend of mine. And if she reads this, I hope she won't be mad at me. But she wanted to figure out how to be a bad girl, and she hadn't quite done that when I wrote this. So this is what this is about. Vanishing point. She did not return to her first home, but resides womb adjacent, a place where heartbeat echoes, life abated, and self is still a pre-drawn creation.
Yay.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. Are you going to send it to the person, to her?
She will find out about it when the book comes out. So she might yell at me, but that's okay.
Oh, that's awesome. Richard, I think you're next. I'm coming your way. And remember to unmute. Unmute. Thank you. Hey, Richard, unmute. Unmute. We can't hear you.
Yeah.
Now we can.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Yeah, I thought I had already done that, but I guess I didn't. Anyway, I was so charmed by Grace's Adam and Eve poem, and I thought I'd read mine. Um, and I think every poet should have an Adam and Eve poem. So if you don't, get to work. Uh, anyway, mine is called Creation Story. Eve did the crime by taking the apple. Adam aided and abetted by eating it, then later claimed he was seduced, as if God would accept that excuse. The tale must be true because it keeps occurring. What I don't understand is how we know the apple was an apple and not a peach or pear or plum. I don't recall the Bible being specific. Don't remember seeing Red Delicious or Granny Smith in the Old Testament. So who's to say it wasn't a Waldorf salad with chopped walnuts dressed in a light vinaigrette? They were in a garden, after all, and had an eclectic menu, at least 6 different kinds of lettuce. Waiters in white loincloths, wooden sporks clacking softly against stoneware bowls. Maybe a little tree climbing music in the background. Oh, the life of luxury we could have had, all our troubles avoided, if only Eve had offered the man something less desirable. An olive, perhaps, so sour, so oily, instead of the apple, so deliciously red, so tempting. We might have had a different history, perhaps an extra virgin version pressed between our pages, a history we could be more proud of, one without sin or need of God, a world where we could be a bunch of naked vegetarians rooted in an overpopulated Eden, leaf gazing, waiting for the tomatoes to ripen, and asking if other gardens like this exist beyond the heaven around us.
Thank you, Richard. Oh, that's so awesome. And I also,
Thank you.
have to think that, you and Grace with the sense of humor, that's one of the things that I do really enjoy. So that was lovely.
Thank
I
you.
headed towards you, Doc. Let's see. All you.
Okay. Tantric Dance. Awakened by plangent voice of a jay, soulful cooing of doves, and dancing rays of sun, I turn, gaze upon you, your sublime beauty radiating through the morning. You smile in your dreaming, slowly wake into the brilliance of day. You stretch, sensuously, sinuously, reaching for me. We glow a radiant joy. We join, we merge, a tantric entwining of souls in age-old dance of love.
Oh, thank you, Doc. That is lovely. If people want to unmute, you certainly can, and we can all clap. Yay. That was just awesome. I love open mic for that reason.
This was an awesome open mic.
I really, it was. And I love hearing different voices. I also like how some of
Are
them.
you going to read for us?
Oh, yeah. I did actually find, thank you, Susanna. I did actually find a poem. There we go. And it's a newer one, meaning written within the past year. To you who are joining the chorus, my future hummingbird, my lima bean, my other heart within, my good night moon, my tethered kite, my too soon daughter of larger seas. Awe awaits us like a dog-eared book. I have found God in all the wrong people, a man with music in his teeth and wind in his eyes, a blue friend clicking like an upturned beetle on a slick bathroom floor, in a suitcase full of hair dye and love poems to the road, packed for trips to somewhere, anywhere else, before looking in the mirror of a rehab's bathroom. Love anyway. Ride the truck that drives us down back roads thick with kudzu, sparked by sunflowers and tiger lilies, stretched like forever below the mare's tails of trailing cirrus clouds. There are spaces between my words which can only be sung by you.
Wow.
That was to my daughters. I had the first one move away, further away to Georgia. And so when she was leaving, I think that's what got me thinking about, what do you say to a kid who's leaving? She was on her way to college, but Raleigh was so close. Just thank you all so very much. And Grace, it was so lovely. I feel so honored that we got to spend time with you and hear your
Yes, well, thank you very much. And thank everyone for coming. It was great to hear everyone's work as well. Yeah. So, and I think we've all been given a prompt or an assignment that, everyone should have a Adam and Eve poem. So if you don't have one, you have to.
Maybe we need an anthology. I know we've got several people here who have a lot of experience in creating anthologies. Grace, Susanna, and Richard. Richard ran Cackalack, which was our Carolinas anthology. So.
Oh, okay. There is an anthology, called of Mary poems. It came out maybe about a year and a half ago. It's called Mother Mary Comes to Me.
Yes, they came here. It was fabulous.
Yes, it's really a good anthology. And there's an Eve, Just Eve anthology coming out, but I don't know of any, Adam and Eve or, Bible altogether. They probably exist out there, but I don't know of any in the last few years, but yeah.
Yeah, Colin did a great job of editing that. It was just it was fabulous. And so there is an Just Eve anthology as well.
Yes, and I'm trying to remember what press is going to do it, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
I'll have to look that one up. That's wonderful.
Yeah, it's not out yet, and I haven't heard from them in a while, but my Eve poem will be in it. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I'll have to look that one up. We had Slide to Unlock, and that's who connected me with the Mother Mary anthology. It was fabulous. So.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, thank you all so very much.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks, enjoyed it.
Take care.
Glad everybody was here. Thanks.